Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Split Screen Media Podcast. This is episode 7, I think. I'm Chris Blankenship. With me, as always, is my host, Connor DeRose.
Hey, everyone.
And this week, we have another recurring guest. We're bringing Joey Baden back.
What up?
Connor, I got to ask you, after last night, how are you feeling? For those who don't know, Connor and we watched Ghost Rider and did a drinking game to it.
I feel okay. I was a little tired this morning. So I guess I can say for everybody who hasn't played a Ghost Rider drinking game, which is, I'm assuming, all of you.
Everyone.
Two of the rules were that you take a sip every time there's fire and every time they say the name Johnny.
Oh my gosh.
And 2 sips for every time someone dies.
Which is the entire movie. The whole movie is one big flame.
I think I finished. I had a fifth of Captain Morgan. I think I finished like a third of it.
I got about halfway down through my Sailor Jerry.
Sailor Jerry. Classic.
It was called like Crush an Apple or
Savage Apple.
Savage Apple.
You had Savage Apple, and I had Sliced Apple.
Mine was way more aggressive, I think.
That's what you get for paying $5 for it.
20, sir.
Oh, you overpaid.
I definitely overpaid. The prices, I don't know, the prices here seemed way more expensive when I was in the ABC store.
So
They know you're going to pay for it during the quarantine. They're like,
yeah,
you need this more than we do.
That's the quarantine supply and demand.
They might have like put the prices up because of that. For anybody who doesn't live in Virginia or any of these states, I guess, where this either applies or doesn't apply, we have something called an ABC store where it's the only place in the state where you're allowed to buy alcohol or hard liquor. So I think it's like 9 o'clock they close or something like that.
They do now. It used to be like 11 or 12,
yeah, it used to be late.
right? But because of the pandemic, they've brought it up to like 8 or 9.
Yeah, it's much earlier now, but it's really inconvenient because like the only other time I went to California, it was nice because you could just walk into a 7-Eleven and buy whatever you want. Like it's really cool. But
hey, to be fair, you can go to 7-Elevens in Virginia and buy whatever you want. I did that for 5 years.
You just don't buy what's in the 7-Eleven.
3 years legally. New Jersey does you one better because they have stores where they sell their beer, liquor, wine, all of that, and you can't have it anywhere else.
Oh wow!
So it's only like in one spot they have that too.
Yeah, they have like
even worse.
I don't even know what they call them, but yeah, it's basically just like a giant warehouse of booze.
Interesting.
But yeah, they don't sell it in like grocery stores or gas stations or anything like that.
That's funny because I thought we had like the strictest rules for.
Same actually.
Hey, there's some counties out there, like probably in the South still, that still have like dry counties or no alcohol sales on Sundays and stuff like that.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
This is more time that I wanted to spend on this.
Cut it in post.
But yeah, we'll talk about alcohol all podcasts if we want.
I want to talk about Ghost Rider all podcast.
Yeah, I saw Ghost Rider when I was younger, but that was it's a good refresher.
Good refresher.
I still haven't finished the second one yet. I stopped watching it the one time in college. I never could turn it back on. It was so bad.
Oh, the second one is amazing.
I think we were talking about watching that, Connor, weren't we?
Yeah, we were talking about watching that next weekend. It's funny because I think I said this as we were watching it, and I will stand to this. That movie is terrible. Like, it's really, really bad, but it definitely falls into the so bad it's good camp.
That's where it's fun.
And some of the CG for 2007, like some of the fire effects and like the Ghost Rider effects still hold up today. Like that movie has good parts, and I will stand by that.
Yeah, you really liked one of the scenes where like the fire like went across his face, like it's changed from the skull back to Nicolas Cage's face, and you were like pretty impressed with that. It actually did look pretty good.
It was a pretty good transition. There's like the amazing scene where he's like screaming and yelling and transforming for the first time. Like,
isn't that just every Nicolas Cage movie?
Yeah.
You're gonna have to be more specific, buddy.
He like, so as he's yelling, skin is like flying off his face to reveal the bone underneath. and you kind of see like steam coming out or whatever. And I mean, it's amazing because it's Nicolas Cage acting his little heart out. But that CG actually looks better than like some of the Marvel CG I've seen recently.
Okay. Well, do you want to get into our first topic of the day?
Yeah.
Because it wasn't Ghost Rider.
It wasn't Ghost Rider at all, no.
It was kind of a follow-up to last podcast where we talked about microtransactions. And you had mentioned, I think, Fallen Order, they've taken microtransactions out of it, right?
So that was sort of EA's, I think, departure from the microtransaction model, because
Okay.
before that they had put out Battlefront 2, which up until I think maybe a year ago was filled with microtransactions. And then I think what I had assumed had happened was that they had learned their lesson, and they didn't put any in Fallen Order because it's a single player focused story. But apparently, which is what I think we were going to be talking about, was in Madden which is still EA, they had hiked up all of the prices for their microtransactions right after Black Friday when people bought their game.
Yeah, I was trying to lead into the conversation last week. We talked about someone had said something about EA moving them out and being like, "Oh, maybe it'll get better." And I mentioned that EA still has like tons of microtransactions in their sports games. And this week, earlier, they hiked up all the prices for the premium level packs, which are rewards for leveling up. And if you still aren't following, you level up, and then you have unlocked a pack in the store, which you have to buy with real money. And they increase the prices on those. So you don't even get the packs for leveling up. You get the opportunity to buy those packs. So, and they didn't just raise it by like $1 or $2. They doubled or tripled the value of these packs.
I don't think we said this at the beginning, but this is for Madden.
Yeah, this is for Madden 21.
Ultimate Team, right?
Yeah, Ultimate Team. I don't know if they did it in any of their other sports games or.
I think FIFA has Ultimate Team too. I don't play
it,
but
it does.
I know they do have it.
The other one I was thinking of was 2K, but that's not made by EA.
Yeah, it's made by 2K.
I think you can still get ripped off there too, but I'm not familiar with it.
They've gotten in a lot of trouble recently, actually, for 2K21, because even though the next-gen version had all these amazing upgrades, the game, up until a certain point, I think it might actually still have this, but there were unskippable ads in the game. So there'd be like a 30-second ad after every game.
Oh.
Like
so they made their money off that other shit. They don't need the microtransaction money.
Right.
Well, they still put them in there, don't get me wrong.
Oh, okay.
But they also just found another way to nickel and dime you and waste your time.
Yeah.
That does the same thing too, where at halftime they'll be like, sponsored by Snickers. Eat a Snickers, they do the same thing on the Madden games.
I think you can skip those though.
Yeah, at least you can skip those, but the fact that they put those in is kind of still a little shaky.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a fine line between what I think is acceptable with that and what I don't. Because a lot of times especially in the older Madden games, it would pop up, it would be like, oh, this is the play of the quarter brought to you by Old Spice. And that would be it. And I think that's cool because it makes it feel more like an actual football game.
It's a little more subtle.
Yeah, a little more subtle. But the unskippable 30-second ad and what you're describing where it's like, basically a whole advertisement for that product, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
These price hikes, we never got an answer. It's believed to be intentional because usually when stuff like this happens, they fix it, but it hasn't been fixed. And it also came conveniently right before their Black Friday promo, which is funny that they run a promo for Black Friday in their stores and stuff like that. But that's when a lot of people buy points and spend actual money on the game. And so it's just a little convenient that they hiked up the prices right before everyone's about to splurge a ton of money on the game.
It sounds a lot like what they did or what they are doing with Marvel's Avengers, because that game sold so poorly. And apparently Madden 21 also sold very poorly compared to the previous years because of like just the general game, like the glitchiness and the lack of any sort of innovation from the year prior. But that's kind of what they were, they're sort of doing the same thing there where they were because they've like put this game on sale. They don't really actually care about the game not being as expensive because where they're going to get you is those crazy microtransactions.
Yeah, for sure.
They just want people to own the game at this point. They don't care how they get or how much they pay for it.
Which to me is surprising. They don't put the whatever the newest sports game is. They don't put it on the EA Play like their Game Pass type service, they only have like they have Madden 20 on there, but not Madden 21. And with that in mind, it does seem interesting to me that they wouldn't just give you Madden 21 for free so that they can get you with the microtransactions. It seems kind of like bizarre. They really try and nickel and dime you as much as they possibly can.
Yeah, I think in their heads this game was going to sell much better. And if they had, crystal ball and they were able to look and see how few sales there actually were, they probably would have put it on it's EA Play, right?
Yeah, EA Play.
Yeah, I guarantee you that would have been the move if they had known. And it'll be interesting to see next year what they do, because I think now that they're partnered with Microsoft for the Game Pass, I think that's exactly what you're going to get, is that they're going to be like, all right, well, we're putting one of these out every year. It doesn't take that much effort besides updating the players.
Yeah.
The core game is the same. Let's just make it free, and then the microtransactions will only get worse. I guarantee you.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Just wait till they start putting it in franchise mode and the other modes and stuff like that. I think that'll be the next move, is just basically turning it into a freemium game.
Yeah. Now, Chris, have you? Because I think you're the only one of us that actually has Madden 21. Have you put any money into it, or have you stuck to like just doing things to get your players for free?
No, I haven't put any money into it. I only pretty much grind the solos and challenges and try and get money that way.
Okay. Do you plan to at all?
Not really. I've put like a couple bucks here and there in the past, but it really, like, the value of like what you spend versus what you get is like terrible.
Yeah,
like,
it's
you
definitely
can spend,
not worth it.
yeah, I think it's like $1 for like a gold player, and then like $5 for like a gold player pack. It's very bad, and like you have to spend a lot of money to get anything. I think actually the promo they have right now for the Black Friday, they did the math, and basically there's no way that you can grind it out without paying money, like to get the top level players that they released, which is like Cam Chancellor and Tyreek Hill. And you have to, if you grind, you only have to spend an extra $140 to get what is needed for those players. So basically you get blitz tickets from buying packs with their bolts, which is the promo currency. And so you can grind out some of the challenges and get those bolts and buy the packs with the bolts, but you're going to have to actually spend more money to get enough tickets from those packs. So they said if you do the challenges, you have to spend $140. If you don't care about the challenges, you have to spend about $200 to have enough tickets.
Do you know what you're describing right now?
What's that?
It's Candy Crush.
Yeah.
You're describing every mobile game that exists, which is so absurd to me that you
That's
can
a AAA.
Yeah, for a AAA game, you can charge $60 and still treat it like it's a fucking Angry Birds.
Yeah.
In kind of that same vein, same thing as EA, it reminds me a lot of The Sims. I'm not sure, it's still made by EA and stuff like that. I think it used to be Maxis, but EA has it now. But it's crazy how many different add-on packs they have in order to get extra content. Like, they make a base game, and like in order to get the entire, I think Sims 4 is the newest one right now. Like the entire Sims with every DLC would be, I think it's like $400 or something like that, if you wanted to have every possible job, every possible place you can go to, every possible outfit. Like, if you truly like wanted to get the most out of your game, it would be around $400, I'm pretty sure. And that's insane to me because it's already a $60 game. So in the same vein as Madden, although it's almost like, it's weird because, in Madden, you're getting the points, which you use to buy packs, which might get you this thing if you're lucky. Whereas those are DLCs, but are still basically microtransactions where you're just buying more of the game that they should have included in the first place.
You know what really pisses me off is day one DLC.
Oh my gosh, yeah. It's like, just put it in the damn game.
Yeah.
Oh, you're describing my constant heartache with NetherRealm games. Like in Mortal Kombat, where it's like, oh, you have to pre-order this character, and then there's like a day one character that is on the loading screen but is locked behind a paywall. Like, that is absurd to me.
Yeah. if you want Spawn and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, you should have pre-ordered it and then spent the extra money for the season pass.
And I'm like, fuck,
you.
I do. I
Yeah.
want.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, we're back live. we had a hiccup there. We were on the wrong Zoom, so we were about to get kicked out. So we are back. Don't remember what we were talking about. It was a slight. Actually, this is gonna sound really bad because we're talking about one thing and then just cuts to me talking about this. We had
We had finished the thought before. The last thing we were talking about was we were mentioning the microtransactions, and then we started talking about how the scummiest one that I can think of right now, or the one that affects me the most, was the NetherRealm one, where they put in the characters behind a lock screen, and I think that was pretty much where we ended.
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to show you a visual from Madden, which is, I'm kind of glad that we had that hiccup because I was able to find the visuals now where I wouldn't have before. So I'm going to share. So this is what the lineup screen used to look like. Joey, you're probably familiar with this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I want to point you at this middle linebacker position right here. So these are your starting middle linebackers.
Okay.
Right? You usually generally have two on the field. They changed it to this and left this big empty space
Oh
here.
my gosh.
So it looks like this now. And it was intentional.
EA, everything's ass.
So they put all of the linebackers here, and you can't see your second starting linebacker depending on what formations you run. And they just left this.
I don't understand what the negative is.
This looks like
the
trash.
weird empty negative space.
They should have centered the linebacker like in the middle, or like they should have.
I thought
they should have moved all the linebacking core like together, like the spacing. Do you see the space? So the spacing between right linebacker and middle or left linebacker, like it just.
Right, they didn't do anything with it. I thought you were saying it affects some kind of gameplay thing, not having
it doesn't.
There, but it's just lazy.
There's a lot of gameplay issues, but like, see how like neat and all the spacing is the same.
Right.
Like, this is your linebacking core. These four people right here, and it's kind of how they are on the field. And this is just like.
We should describe what we're looking at for the audio.
Yeah. So what they had before was. You could see your starting four linebackers, generally speaking, in football, depending on what formation. But these are there's four guys in the linebacking core that usually are going to start. And they had them lined up, and the spacing was even between each of them. And then they made an intentional change to put all of the middle linebackers together, but they didn't like shift the spacing or anything like that. So they basically removed one of the cards and just left that big empty space there. And it looks really bad.
So basically, we're just looking at like a picture on the monitor of the ultimate team where you can like customize all your players and stuff, and they just instead of pushing it all together to make it look nice and neat like they do every year with these games, they were rushed for time and they just left a big empty space. That's super funny. I didn't know that at all.
It was actually launched like this, and they made the change to this like after the game launched. I don't know.
Oh, that's even worse.
Yeah, they made the change after launch.
That's like an active choice then.
Yeah.
An act of treason, more like. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that's terrible. So I don't see. Yeah, I guess I should make an addendum to my statement that I made last week, saying that microtransactions will go away. I'll say microtransactions will go away except EA.
Yeah.
I think other companies are going to find other ways, like we were talking about before with the $10 increase to video games, and the cost associated with that. I think will help to level out them being able to not do the microtransaction model anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But it's EA is awful, and I don't think, as long as it's legal, I'll say they will never change their ways.
Yeah, and there's different kinds of microtransactions, and like if it's just cosmetic, like just skins, like I don't really care too much about that. Like EA has uniforms that you can buy. I'm never gonna buy that shit with real money. I'm sure they don't make a lot of money off of it, but I think that stuff's fine. But like the basically gambling and loot box pack rolling, all that shit is, I don't know. Watch your favorite streamers pull them because they have enough money to do it.
Right.
You don't have to do that.
And that's the whole thing where you're not technically allowed to advertise things to children. And there's a lot of gray area with that, especially on TV, like as to what technically, like what qualifies a child advertisement. But it's sort of the same thing here because not only are they advertising to children, but they're also advertising something illegal to children, which is gambling.
Yeah. Illegal
So
in some states.
illegal in some, well, for their age, I guess.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
the
yeah,
kids that are
yeah.
playing it, if they're not of, I think it's 18 to gamble, right?
Some is 21.
Some is 21. So yeah.
Yeah.
So either way, anybody under those two ages like wouldn't be allowed to do that, except here where it's perfectly fine because EA gets paid.
Do you guys want to kind of switch to esports talk, or?
Yeah, sure. Because I guess when we had mentioned this before, I thought we were all going to be on the same page, but I'm curious to hear everybody's thoughts.
So I think the question you posed, Connor, is, or you were talking with your family and some friends earlier about, are esports actual sports? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay. I didn't even get like really a nod. I couldn't tell.
Oh no, so I thought you were going to keep going with it. I did.
I was making sure that was right.
Oh yes, yeah. That's so
yeah.
we were basically just saying if they qualified as real sports or not.
So, Connor, what's your opinion on that before we get into it?
100% yes. I
100%
think
yes.
Yeah, I think they are absolutely sports. I think you can make the argument that the players aren't athletes, but I think I actually pulled up the definition.
Can I get Joey's hot take real quick?
Yeah. No, while I pull that up, Joey, I want to hear what you have to say.
Joey, quick answer. Esports sports.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. I think I disagree, but I'm willing to have my mind changed.
All right.
Okay.
Let me see the definition of sports.
This is really important. What is the definition of a sport?
Okay. Merriam-Webster. We don't mess with anything else though. All right.
Oh, I'm on it. Don't worry. Okay. So here's the definition of a sport: an activity involving physical exertion and skill in which an individual or team competes against another or others for entertainment.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, sure. An activity involving physical exertion and skill in which an individual or team competes against another or others for entertainment. So for me at least, by this definition, I would qualify esports as sports. I think it ticks every one of these except potentially physical exertion.
That's where I was going to go. But so obviously it's a team or solo sport. It's an activity for entertainment.
Check all of those.
There is skill. You have to have skill to be an esports player. There's definitely ranking and things like that. But is physical exertion, and that's why I wanted to hear the definition, because I wanted to know if it specifically included physical exertion.
So it does, but then I think that calls into question other things that are sports that also have about the same amount of physical exertion. So
I was gonna say like NASCAR, like
exactly
you're sitting on your lazy ass driving a car.
I think. Okay, so we'll talk about NASCAR in a second. I mean, I was gonna argue for it, saying that I'll argue for it right now. The skill, like with the controller and being able to be precise with the sticks, or that could be technically physical exertion, right? Like hand-eye coordination and that kind of stuff.
So people get really into it as well. Like a lot of times, if you're watching any events or something like that, people will start like jumping up or like moving around and stuff like that while they're playing, or getting like really into it too. I mean, like it's more of an excited part of it, but they are like working up a sweat and stuff like that. And I think that counts.
That's not required. I don't think that's part of the sport.
I mean, it's not necessarily, but it is something that happens during it.
It's something that happens, but I think it has to actually be like a football player works up a sweat because he has to tackle a 300-pound dude. You doing jumping jacks while playing, Mario Kart or whatever is not the same.
But the level of physical exertion is, I think, where the gray area comes in, because you could qualify this right now. For audio listeners, I'm moving my finger. This could be considered physical exertion. Like it's any sort of exertion is just the kinetic movement of your body. So really, you sitting there, even like your twitches or like if you kind of adjust yourself, that's physical exertion.
So NASCAR is a sport.
And that's exactly what it is in NASCAR. And what was interesting was that my my stepdad was saying that a lot of what they're doing now with the with NASCAR and with other sort of racing sports is that these people have bought these $1,000+ rigs that are like racing sims. So it's a video game, but you can still it feels exactly like a car. It has all the same things that you would normally need to be in a NASCAR race or something like Formula One, whatever they have it for. But people are competing in these races. The prizes are the same. It's the same type. It's the same people. It's the same skill level required. But he was also saying that he didn't necessarily consider esports to be real sports. And I'm like, well, what's your distinction between the two of these? If they're the exact, like, is it just being there and risking injury? Because that to me doesn't mean like that it's a sport.
So it sounds like, yeah, the level of physical exertion matters. So I think with esports, if you're saying it's a sport, the level of physical exertion makes everybody technically an athlete, and then the only differentiator is skill, right? Like everybody can do this, right? But it just depends on how good you are at a specific game.
Right. I mean, they call chess a sport, and that's essentially the same thing.
That was, I didn't know if they consider that a sport or not. And I was going to bring that up because that's a big mental, like if you get into like the mental and skill aspect of something, with very little physical exertion, I would even less than esports.
Yeah, for sure. And they have that as a genuine. I mean, it's the same with like anything you could think of, like bowling or ping pong. I mean, bowling maybe a little bit less.
Bowling is definitely a sport. I think there's definitely skill to it, and the physical exertion, like with the arm and it's really a whole body movement. But
right.
Can you name me like a traditional sport, like not chess, like a traditional sport where there isn't a lot of physical exertion and you have to rely on skill to be the main differentiator?
I would argue to a certain extent golf is kind of what you're describing.
So I would argue against that. Golf is a very full body. Like if you look at like Tiger Woods' swing and you look at a golfer's swing, they're using every muscle in their body like during their swing.
But the physical exertion aspect of it, I think, is still pretty low because it's not like you're a linebacker and you're running into another 300-pound dude every 30 seconds. Like it's one swing and then you get it and you put your lazy ass in the cart and you ride down to the ball.
So I mean, baseball is kind of the same way where you're kind of doing a swing and then you run. So there's a little bit more physical exertion with that than golf. So where is the line between, how much physical exertion? Are you saying any amount, even if it's this?
I'm arguing, I guess my argument is that there isn't a line. I think if it fits everything else, like all the other, it's against other people or a whole team, it's entertaining, it's competitive, there's skill required, and there's any amount of physical activity, I would consider it a sport.
I think that's maybe a better debate to have, is where the line is. I think it lies not a sport because the level of physical exertion is not enough in my eyes. Joey, what do you think? Where's your line?
I think I'm a little bit more with Connor on this one. Where I think as long as it hits the rest of it, I think physical exertion is more of pretty much no matter what you do in your life, you're physically exerting. As long as you're using energy, and even if it's simple as clicking a button on a controller or a keyboard, I think that you're using energy. At the end of the day, you're going to be tired and hungry because of what you were doing during the day, and that's a true sign of physical exertion is working up a sweat, being hungry, being tired. And I think that we did maybe look at some interviews from some esports players, but I would say that maybe not as heavily as Patrick Mahomes after throwing all those passes and getting hit and all that kind of stuff. But to an extent, they did still physically exert themselves that day, and they're still going to probably rest easy at the end.
I think the main thing is like I don't know exactly where my line lies. I think with golf, like muscles are being worked actively during a swing, like very hard, right? And in esports, they're not really. And so that's the differentiator. Like that's my line is somewhere in between those. And I think like you can argue, yeah, like a finger moving is physical exertion, but it's not a lot of physical exertion, right? Like I'm not like needing a breather after playing a game of Call of Duty, you know.
I was
And I'm
gonna
not working
say,
up a sweat. I think I want to say this: the main part of that definition is physical exertion and skill. So while you have skill, and there's no doubt it's a competition, I think physical exertion needs to be there. I don't think it's present enough in esports.
If I can like turn on a dime slightly, I think something else that's interesting about this that I find really cool is that because I consider this a sport, and I guess even if you don't technically, this still remains true. You are able to make a a very good living. I mean, some of these championships, the prize pools for these are absolutely insane.
Yeah.
Some of the
sponsorships
League of
too.
Legends and Dota, like it's like $25 million. It's a crazy amount of money.
Mhm.
But you are able to perform this and be an e-athlete and not risk any sort of injury like you would in quote unquote real sports or sports where that do require more physical exertion. And I think that's really cool. Like if you can still make money and not have to worry about getting slammed down by some 300-pound dude like that, I think that's
Yeah.
a good
Yeah.
But
deal.
your worst thing
I
is
think-
maybe like spraining your finger from typing too fast, you know?
Yeah.
I think
At the end of the day, that's
arthritis.
dope.
I think the main argument there is it's. I'm not saying it's not a competition, because it 100% is, and I think that's what you just described. It's a competition. I don't think it's a sport.
And I was gonna say if I can go back to the golf for a moment here. So I was actually on the golf team in high school, and we had a coach and assistant coach and stuff like that when I was doing golf. And I didn't have to do any working out when I was in golf. I'm not particularly very strong, and neither were most of the people there, except for my assistant coach, because the assistant coach of the golf team was also the coach of the JV football team. And that man was jacked. And he sucked at golf. And he is one of my favorite things that he said. A big reason why he wanted to be the assistant coach to golf was so he could go out and do it more. He's like I played football when I was in school, and I coach football, and I know it takes such strength and all this kind of stuff, and like I know I can do that well because of my strengths. He's like, I will come to golf, and I just can't get my posture right, and I can't hit the ball as far as like one of the weak ass high school kids who
So-
just knows their better form. So like while he could physically exert the crap out of himself to try and hit this ball, he'll still hit dirt and send that flying. Whereas someone else as weak and scrawny as myself can maybe hit it like more than this 200-pound beefy dude.
It's the
So-
skill aspect, yeah.
Yeah,
And I didn't work up
you
a
said
sweat.
you said the word form, and that is technique and skill.
Yeah, technique and
And
skill.
so I mean, it's the same thing with football. Like if you could be a bigger guy, but if you don't have the right form, you're gonna miss that tackle,
Right.
right?
But like I didn't physically exert myself all that much in golf because it was like for me the hardest part of it was walking, and that wasn't technically a part of the sport. That was getting to the sport, which I technically think yes is hitting the ball. And I would like I don't think it takes that much energy to swing.
Well, if I
Well,
can,
you might not have been a good golfer.
I mean, that is fair.
Yeah.
I think at the pro levels, like
yeah, there's definitely more to it at like the actual the pro levels. But if I can go back to the NASCAR example for a second. So do you consider NASCAR a sport?
I think it's less of a sport than golf, but I mean, these drivers are in very, very hot temperatures. They definitely sweat. I think I don't know the NASCAR competitive, like if there's a NASCAR competitive esports scene.
Well,
But
no, but that's I'm just asking about regular NASCAR. So
I
that
know I'm
you think
I'm
of it less as a sport, but it does still fall into that category, correct?
Yeah, and I think that skill and things like that are very required, especially with driving and being able to just have the right amount of finesse, especially because those cars get like inches within each other, even like very tiny fragments. Sometimes they hit each other, but they get very close. And I think and that's very much skill. Depending on the line that you're racing and things like that. I think it's as far as the skill is there. The physical exertion, I think, is also there, just because of the environment of being in a race car
Okay,
and
so
taking every bump and sitting there and being in the hot temperatures and the suit and all that stuff.
okay, so knowing that now, knowing that that's how you feel about NASCAR, and going back to my example of what I'm talking about, what they're doing now with the racing sims, is because everything is exactly the same. The feel of the car, like how all the I don't know. I'm not a car guy. The gears and shit. I don't know, but like it's the same exact feeling being in this simulator because they cost so much money. Is that a sport? Because I think if that is a sport, if you're saying NASCAR is a sport and this is the same thing, and it's essentially an esport, then I would argue that that would fall into the same category as playing Overwatch or doing any of these other sports.
So
That's a
I
good
think
point.
the main
So it sounds like your
fault
definition
there.
of sport almost goes to danger, almost like it has to have like possible contact.
No, not possible contact. Just do these. So the first thing is the two things I mentioned. One was like feeling every bump and things. So the Sims, do they have like a vibration or something in their chair?
They do, yes. So
I'm not familiar with the NASCAR Sims.
gotcha, yeah. So it's accurate to the actual track there, and they add any sort of like divots or debris, or because like the rubber will just burn off these tires and end up in little chunks, and they can mess
Okay.
up the feel of the car when you're driving and all that stuff. So all of that is built into the design of the course. It's essentially a one-for-one remake of not just the cars but the actual course itself. So
Okay.
theoretically, everything should feel
Well,
exactly like
they're not wearing a fire suit or a racing suit,
no, they're not wearing a, they're not wearing a,
which I think adds to the level of physical exertion because it gets hot, very hot in those cars when you're wearing all that gear.
okay. What if your
So
AC breaks in your house or something?
Yeah, it's like what if you don't have
Okay.
AC in the
Okay.
in the racing ring?
they're blowing space heaters on the esports
Yeah.
players. It's
Just to
just
make
like
it
the
feel more
racing game.
realistic.
It's just like the real ones. So I would almost argue that it's not the same. The level of physical exertion is a little less. I think in this there might be a gray area where some esports maybe are more sports than other games. Like some games in esports are more of a sport than others. Like if you're truly competing in a NASCAR sim where every bump is and divot is calculated, that might be closer to a sport
And if
because
sorry.
your whole body is taking that beating. And I don't know. There is also something about not being like physically present in that race. You're doing it in a simulation. So maybe the injury or the contact aspect is a player. I'm not really sure if I have an opinion on that.
And that can definitely fall into your own opinion of the sport, but I think in terms of the definition that I read, and I think the definition that we're going off of, the physical contact doesn't matter with this definition of sport. So regardless of whether you're 2 seconds away from possibly dying or you're sitting in an air-conditioned room driving the car, that doesn't affect this definition of sport. If we wanted to get into
the exertion in terms of AC or not, or being loaded up in a fire suit or not, I think matters.
Oh yeah, I meant the risk of death. The risk
of death doesn't. Okay,
matter.
so if we take that out, I think it becomes close. Esports become closer to a sport.
Right, and if you find a different definition that's maybe more accurate or more generally like accepted as the definition, then I think we could argue if it says like, oh, you have to have some sort of physical risk or harm to yourself for it to be a sport. But as of right now, that doesn't stand in that particular definition. I personally, I think the rest of it matches up to be a sport.
Yeah, and I would almost classify those NASCAR sims as a sport, but the level of physical exertion with just a controller playing NBA 2K, it's not enough for me to warrant a sport.
And what about if I can kind of pick your brain a little bit more on it before I pivot to the next topic? So, what about if there's some sort of VR esport? Because in VR, you are the controller in that aspect. Same with, let's say it's like Wii Bowling or something like that. You have to physically, move your arm and do the bowling motion or do the tennis motion. If it's like Wii Sports or
I think you actually just answered your own question. You said physically. The word physically, I think, kind of implies that there's some level of physical exertion more than just clicking a button or moving a controller. So I think, like I said, I think maybe looping esports, all games into esports as a whole was a bad idea. I think some could be classified as sport and others not. I think it's very much a gray area. I think things like Wii Bowling or those NASCAR sims where there is a level of physical exertion, or VR where you're the controller, those can be classified as sports. I think a traditional handheld controller is not a sport.
So can I make a statement, a blanket statement, and then you can correct me if what I'm saying is wrong?
Yes.
I just want to, because I have I think I have an idea of what you're saying now. So
yeah.
if there's a competition for Counter-Strike Go, like the PC, do you know Counter-Strike Go?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So if there's or let's say Overwatch. So there's an Overwatch competition where all these people are getting.
I'm about as familiar with Overwatch as I am CS:GO.
All right, fucking
Which
Call
is
of Duty.
none.
I don't know. Any sort of like what you're describing, like handheld game. Let's say Call of Duty for this instance. There's a group of people playing Call of Duty together. That to you is not a sport.
Right.
If these same people were to compete in a Wii Sports competition, that would be a sport to you.
Yes.
Okay.
And if it wasn't a physical handheld controller, if it was a VR Call of Duty or a something like that, like if it was a more like you put on a morph suit and you do whatever, like they whatever you do, that would be more of a sport too.
Yeah, I think it comes down maybe not the game, but the controller, because that's how you interact with the game. And so there's some controllers have more of a level of physical exertion than others. And so if I'm playing Call of Duty with a controller, not a sport. If I'm playing Call of Duty with a Rock Band drum set, sport.
Okay.
That's the Guitar Hero guitar, just shooting people.
That's
360 no scope.
Because to me, I don't really see the difference in having a paintball competition and playing Call of Duty where it's the same rules and you're trying to eliminate your targets and you're doing all that. To me, even though the physical exertion is different, it's just different. It's not non-existent. And I think that's where there's some discrepancy, because even though it's less, there's still the same amount of skill, different skill, mind you, but there's still the same amount of skill required. So to me, I would consider both of those things sports.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm doubting the skill of any of these competitors. I think how you interact within the competition and the physical exertion is different. And so how different that is what makes it a sport or not a sport. I think I was on a train of thought and I lost it.
Choo choo.
Yeah.
We can give our
how you interact with the competition makes it a sport or not a sport.
Okay. So why don't we each, now that we've had this discussion, why don't we close it out? We'll each give our final thoughts on exactly what we think.
Okay.
And so we can kind of so mine is I think they're 100% sports. I think even though, again, like I just said, the physical exertion is different, it doesn't mean that it's non-existent. It's still very much a factor in how you move, how you play, whether it's motion controls, VR, regular controller. To me, it's all the same. So I would say yes, they are, and anything where it falls into those parameters, which every activity I think would fall under physical exertion. So as long as the rest of them are also met, I would consider it a sport.
Okay. Joey?
I'd say I'm in the same boat as Connor there. I believe that they are sports, especially using the Merriam-Webster dictionary definition.
Basically,
I think they fit.
Basically ditto.
Yeah, basically ditto.
Basically ditto.
I would say that the competitions that these are require skill and definitely do require skill. I think that depending on how a performer or player interacts with the competition depends on if it's a sport or not. And that is measured by the level of physical exertion. And so some games can be classified, or some interactions with games can be classified as a sport and some cannot. But I think most of the traditional esports, as they're played right now, are not sports.
So for you, it's very situational.
Very situational, very how you interact with the competition. And I think traditionally a lot of the competitions are controller or keyboard or mouse. And to me, while it takes a lot of skill, it doesn't take a lot of physical exertion, and they're not a sport.
Okay.
I won't rule out that some esports competitions can be technically classified as sports according to your definition, but I think the majority of them are not.
Okay, that's interesting because I definitely see your point. I disagree with you, but I definitely I see where you're coming from with the limited amount of exertion with the controller. It's not enough for you to consider them even e-athletes or whatever you want to say.
Yeah, that's
So
that's why I say that the controller is probably the defining factor in my mind, because you could be a controller in VR. There's a ton of different controllers that you can use to interact, and so however you interact, that level of physical exertion determines it.
Okay.
Also,
Interesting.
you disagree with me, so you're wrong.
Yeah.
Next
you're
topic.
Incorrect. You're incorrect, and I hate you. I had that conversation earlier, and I had this before too. Was with some of my other friends, and they were very, very adamant that it was not sports. And I think some of it comes from a bias of there's a stigma with video games that I think is kind of hard to get over. So even if people are making valid points about, oh, it does take skill and it is a competition, and even in the more traditional sense, you can say there are sponsors and there are prizes and it's televised and all the things that these other sports are. People will hear that and it'll go in one ear and out the other as soon as you say video game. So there definitely is some kind of bias there, I think, for sure.
I was going to say too. Oh, sorry, good.
I was going to say, I think all those things are indicative of a competition.
For me, what helped make it into a sport is when I moved to the area I'm in now. I live across the street from an esports bar, and I had never heard of that thing's existence. And I think by the time you start having restaurants called esports bars, I think that means that at least in some capacity, it's being taken more seriously as a sport. If someone's willing to open business for it.
Is that a bar where you watch esports?
I believe so. Yeah, okay. It's so like a traditional sports bar where you would watch an NFL game. It's just you go there to watch Smash Bros competitions, whatever. I haven't been there myself because of the pandemic, but I saw that it existed, and I was like,
let me know when they.
It just completely blew my mind when I heard that existed, because I was like, I hadn't even thought about that as a possibility. I was like, is B-Dubs just eventually going to get it if esports gets the respects that I think Connor and I both believe it deserves? And when I saw that, it just kind of blew me away.
Let me know when they close. I think they're slowly getting the respect because they're on some sports channels. I mean, even if it's like ESPN 8 or whatever, but they're like in there.
Well, it's interesting too, because I'm sure that esports bar has nights where local people can come in and play as well, because there's such a low barrier to entry when it comes to esports, which is nice. You don't have to be in amazing shape, and you don't have to work on your body all the time and stay at a certain level of physical fitness. Even if you're playing recreational, they have adult league football leagues, you have to be in some level of shape. But with video games, you just have to have that kind of knowledge and skill. So
because there's so low level of physical exertion.
But it's still physical exertion. So for me, it still hits that mark. I think that's where we disagree.
I don't think we're changing our minds.
No. We can get what we can do though is get into the other topic if you want.
Yeah, we're actually we spent a lot of time on that. So actually, do you want to jump straight into Joey's mystery topic?
Sure.
So don't run over time.
Yeah, sure.
All right. So this one's got a little bit of a wind up. It's gonna kind of rely on you guys' knowledge. So we'll see where we're at. Have any of you guys ever played a Yakuza game before?
No.
A what?
Yakuza?
Oh no!
I mean that about answers it, so that's good. No, this is good. I wanted you guys to not have played this before.
Okay, no, I've not.
So first, let me ask: do you know what the Yakuza is?
Yes.
Is that like the Japanese mafia, basically?
Correct.
Okay.
So they have games, the Yakuza games, and I kind of want to hear from each of you on what you think these games are like. Like in your mind, just hearing that there are Yakuza games that exist. I'd like to hear what you think that they are, and then I will try and see if I can subvert your expectations, basically, by telling you what it is.
Is this are they video games or
they're video games. They've been made for quite some time now. I think I had some on the PS2 that I'd never played before.
Okay.
Okay.
Based on how Japanese video games usually go.
Okay.
I'm going to say that it is probably a very exaggerated version of someone who is in the Yakuza. So it's like it's very Final Fantasy in terms of the ridiculousness. Maybe not to that extent, but it probably has a lot of the same combat mechanics where there's a lot of numbers and it's turn-based combat and it's very flashy.
Okay.
But it also tells it's maybe slightly historically accurate or accurate to like how this group actually works, but then it just gets taken to 11 at certain points during the game.
Okay.
So these are games not made by the Yakuza.
No, these are not games made by the Yakuza.
Okay.
This is,
That
I don't even know
changes the
who
question.
I don't know who the
Money
developer
laundering front.
is.
Yeah.
I off the top of my head, I don't know who the developer of the Yakuza games are.
Well, I'm gonna assume they're in Japan, and if they piss them off, then they'll lose some hands. So, I'm gonna guess they're very kind to the Yakuza.
Okay. And then what style gameplay are you thinking that it has?
I'm gonna guess. So first off, I'm gonna guess that it paints them in a good light, and they're probably the protagonist in the story. I don't know.
So I was like, are you sticking with Connor? Or you think it's going to be like Final Fantasy S, turn-based S, or are you thinking it's going to be more like GTA style, but you're just playing as a Japanese mafia person, or kind of where are you at as far as like, if you were to pick this game up and start playing, what do you think you'd be doing in the game?
Can I interject? I think it's going to be a very linear storyline, because I don't know. I don't feel like it would be open world where you can do whatever. I think it's there's a set story and you kind of follow it.
Okay.
My only other thing is that it could be like Sleeping Dogs, where it is kind of a GTA thing. But I feel like it's because if they already have something like that and they've had things like that, like True Crime, that other game in the past, I think this is going to be like either turn-based or like Kingdom Hearts quasi turn-based, where you can move around, but then when you get into a battle, it's like battle fight, and then you have to do the turn-based shit like Pokemon.
Okay. Myself, I haven't actually played it yet either, and the only reason it even came to my knowledge was I was watching Moist Critical play on Twitch. He was just chatting or playing Among Us or something like that, and then he pivoted off it and started playing Yakuza. And in my head, it was just kind of how I thought of it was basically just going to be Japanese Grand Theft Auto. And I was about to turn it off, but I was like, you know what? I kind of want to see what it's like. So he's playing the newest version, which is Yakuza Like a Dragon. And Connor, you actually kind of hit the nail on the head. It's more of a turn-based game, very goofy, very Saints Row-esque. So kind of give you guys an idea of the story that it starts off with is I guess you're a member of the Yakuza, and then you go to prison for like 15 years, and then you get taken back out. And when you go to try and rejoin your family, the guy acts like he doesn't know you, like the head of the family acts like he doesn't know you, and it starts to get into this really ridiculous story where you are homeless. You're wearing a suit, and you start meeting up with other homeless people to start trying to become a hero to the city and try to stop crime as homeless people.
So as homeless man?
As homeless. Like one of the first missions that I saw him do.
So you're not in the Yakuza.
You were, and then you get kicked out of it, basically, and then it's you just in that world of Yakuza. So you get attacked by some thugs trying to steal your money or whatever. These guys are called dad robbers. Like that is their name in the video game, was dad robbers, because they rob middle-aged men because they think they will have money. And as soon as you get into the combat, much like a turn-based RPG, everything kind of morphs. You know, it gets to you're holding your baseball bat all of a sudden. The guys transform, but it's got that sense of wall breaking where he's like, did anyone else just see them change clothes? And it gets really like Deadpool-esque. It's been so interesting of a game, just seeing one of your homeless guys will throw beans at somebody and pigeons will come attack and murder these people Or he'll drink a 40 and then he will light a lighter and breathe fire on these guys to do magic damage. So it's really really ridiculous. And
So I nailed it.
yeah, you kind of got it right. Like in my head, I had no idea what this game was going to be like. And again, keep in mind they're homeless. So, but he's wearing a full-on red suit throughout the game. And then I just turned it on. He's been playing this for a couple of weeks now, basically since it's been out. And I turned it on today, or last night rather. And he's now a business owner. He is the CEO of a confection shop. And all of a sudden, he went from being homeless. All he's done is beat up homeless people. He stopped a local street pisser where he had to chase down and catch a guy peeing in the river. And now he owns a business, and he can choose to have a chicken run his company if he wants. And it's just the most bizarre thing in the world, and it really subverted my expectations of the game. And I went from being having absolutely zero interest in this game to kind of wanting to play it just from watching him play it and having it just blow my mind.
let's get shit straight for a second here, because I want to dig into this.
Sure, yeah.
So this would be like me going to a video game company and pitching my idea for a game and being like, hey, listen guys, so I want to make a superhero game. But instead of playing as the superhero when he has superpowers, we're going to tell the people about when he has superpowers, and you get to play as him 20 years later when he lost his powers and he has cancer. Correct. It's going to be great.
Yeah, you basically play as Hancock from the movie Hancock.
Right, so Hancock, but after Charlize Theron makes him lose all his shit.
Exactly.
The name is very misleading.
Yeah, you have run-ins with the Yakuza just based off of the kind of the story moments I've seen when I've been able to watch. You can see that he's trying to track down his old patriarch and say, like, why do you hate me now? What happened in like the 15 years I was in prison that made you hate me and all this stuff? So it's got like a really good story buried underneath so much ridiculousness. Like it seems that, again, I haven't been paying attention the whole time. I've only been able to turn it on every couple of work days or something like that. But you can tell it's got this deep story implanted in the most ridiculous thing. There's people called city slickers, which are literally they'll attack you and then suddenly they'll be in their bathing suits and holding a pool floaty. And they'll start fighting you in the streets because they're city slickers. So it's just really ridiculous crap like that. It actually is open world, so not quite linear like you expected. You can actually walk around and you can do mini games. You can do the story, do side missions, all you kind of want. But it's almost linear in a sense because you can't go past a certain point because the enemies are a higher level than you type thing. So Dark Souls-esque where it's like it's open world, but if you go there, you'll die. So I just really wanted to bring that up as the mystery topic because I didn't know if I thought you guys hadn't played it, and I just wanted to pick your brains on that.
No, it sounds like Chris's next game.
Yeah. Chris Plays, the new Let's Play for Split Screen Media Play.
Is it what is it on? Do you know what consoles or PC or
both? It's I think Charlie's playing it on PC, but it's on Xbox and PlayStation as well.
I never heard.
I saw that it was one of the kind of release or quasi-release titles for the next-gen systems as well, but I hadn't seen anything for it. I could just kind of assume that it was that level of ridiculous because usually games like that or in that vein are all kind of like over the top and silly and very Japanese.
And I wanted to just one last picky of your brain. Why do you think so? It's called Yakuza Like a Dragon is the official title of the game. Where do you think the dragon part comes from?
I'm guessing it's like the Japanese restaurant that he sleeps outside of because he's fucking homeless.
Okay, Chris.
Does it have something to do with the suit?
No, he has a dragonfish tattoo, but surprisingly, it has nothing to do with that.
I don't know.
All right. So kind of sticking with the fourth wall breaking aspect of the game, several times throughout the main story, the main character mentions as like, oh, kind of like Dragon Quest. So it's literally called Like a Dragon because it plays like the old Japanese RPG Dragon Quest. Like that's what the combat is kind of based off of. So it's called Yakuza Like a Dragon because it's based off of Dragon Quest, a completely separate Japanese RPG.
Are you talking about the one with like Princess Daphne and like the old one where you get to move like the quick time? Oh no, that's Dragon's Lair. Never mind. I'm stupid.
No. Dragon's Quest it's more like I've never played it before, but it's like just a traditional JRPG that's
Yeah.
pretty popular.
They just released a new one like a couple months ago, I think, for the Switch. I know exactly with the little slime guys.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of curious if that is the same developer or not, or if they just were like, "Hey, man, we really love this game, and we're gonna mention you and name our game after you."
Just really like it. This game sounds psychotic, and I want to play it.
I was low key considering like asking for it for Christmas because I was like, this game looks ridiculous, and I was like, this game looks ridiculous. I want to play. Like it was just enough ridiculousness where I was like, I gotta play that. You know where it hits a level at a certain point, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of games have been too easy recently, and one of the ones I really want to try out is Sekiro, which is it's like the From Software guys, but it's the samurai one, and I like that whole time period. I always thought was really interesting, so I'm kind of hoping to pick up that one too. Except that one doesn't have you as a homeless man running around throwing beans.
Yeah. So I looked it up really quickly. So Dragon Quest was made by Square Enix. That's who the developer is there. And Sega actually publishes Yakuza Like a Dragon.
Okay, so
it is an entirely different developer, which kind of is amazing. It's like that's like Deadpool mentioning Batman, where it's like a completely different universe, but they're like, "Yeah, man, we're doing it."
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. Remember right after that, he also mentions dubstep, which was very timely for Deadpool 2.
Yeah, very topical.
Oh my god, I like Deadpool 2 a lot, but there's a lot of moments in there where you're like, oh Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
This was written by a bunch of boomers.
Yeah.
What's the time that we're at right now, Chris?
In hour 7.
Hour 7. Okay.
It's hard to tell with the cut in the middle.
Oh, so that's
mystery.
Just from... Yeah, and that's been the mystery.
Yeah, that's my best guess of where we're at right now. So we're a little over.
Okay, yeah, we can go ahead and wrap it up if you want to.
Yeah, either that or we can talk about Dave Chappelle, or do you want to save that?
Oh yeah, I totally forgot about that.
Because I don't mind. You want to call like a hard stop at like 1:15?
Yeah, I kind of wanted more time to talk. I guess we could that could be like our MCU. We're gonna talk about that next time. Tease of the week.
Next time on Split Screen Media.
Dave Chappelle will return in Avengers.
Okay, yeah. So for our listeners, you can catch that next week. Dave Chappelle. Also, we didn't talk about our pet peeves of movies, our movie pet peeves. So that will be on next time as well. So like, subscribe, comment. What was your favorite part of this video? What you want to see for next time? You can't comment for last time. For next time, unless you're a time traveler, I don't know.
Yeah, we'll edit it. We'll edit and post.
Tell us how you want to change last week's video.
Yeah, and until next time, thank you guys for watching, and goodbye.
Thanks for having me back. Peace.